Hey, how's it going everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to install the TrackMate Dash T11 GPS tracker. We'll be installing it in this 2013 Mini Cooper hardtop. The really neat thing about this tracker is that you can remotely unlock your doors through the app, not to mention the kill switch. So this is the box for the Dash T11. You open it up and there's the user guide with instructions on how to wire this up, troubleshooting, free trial period, and a diagram of the best place to install this. This right here is the GPS antenna, and this is the cellular antenna with 3M tape. And this is the module itself with where you connect the wiring to. So they're pretty well laid out there, and this is where the antennas go. Comes with a SIM card. And if you look below, there's the wiring diagram. Also in the box we have the relay for the kill switch. It's 4 wires. This is the wiring for the door locks. 4 wires. And then this is the main harness with the fuse. This is some of the basic tools you'll need in order to install your GPS tracker. Plastic trim removal tools, test light, voltmeter, some 3M double-sided tape, some 3M electrical tape, some extra wiring, a razor blade, a headlamp, some wire connectors, and some wire strippers. This does not include the tools that you'll need in order to take apart your dash. The first thing you want to do is find a good mounting place for the module. This particular model does not have to be up in the dash like the other ones. For this 2013 Mini Cooper, I'm thinking I could hide the module somewhere back here. So first things first, I gotta take all this apart. So I was able to remove the whole center console. There's the speedometer and the radio. So what I see here is that there's like a little base where I can put the module, and looks like it fits pretty well. I went ahead and put double-sided tape, 3M, and I'm gonna go and stick it right there. But before I do that, I'm gonna hook up the antennas, because we're gonna wire those up so that they end up on top of the dash. The long rectangular one goes right here where it says 4G, and the square one goes where it says GPS. I connected the antennas to the back of the module and ran the wires through the back. So all that's left now is to stick the antennas somewhere back there, and as long as they're facing up and there's no metal above, it should get a good signal. Ideally you'd want it to be outside the dash, but there's not much in the way of this, so this should work just fine having it inside the dash. Maybe one right there, and then the other square GPS maybe somewhere back there in the middle. The cellular antenna has 3M tape, and the GPS I added some myself. Going over the wires of the main harness, red right here is a 12 volt constant, so we're going to hook this up to the battery. This is the one that has the fuse. This black wire is ground, so we just got to find a place to put this one somewhere on the body of the car. Down here, this green wire is the ignition, so this is the one that tells the GPS when the car is on and off. We can hook this one up to the cigarette lighter. The last 2 wires in this harness that we'll be using are this white wire or this yellow wire, depending on which kill switch you'd like to use. The white wire can be used for a fuel cutoff, or the yellow wire can be used for an ignition cutoff. In our case, we're going to be using the ignition cutoff because we're going to be cutting the starter wire. The first wire we want to connect is this red wire, which is the 12 volt constant. That means we have to get power straight from the car's battery. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a wire straight from the car battery through the firewall to this wire. So here we have the positive side of the battery terminal, and what we want to do is connect a wire that goes from the positive side of the battery through the firewall into the GPS. To run this wire through the firewall, we'll need a special insertion tool like this one. That way we can poke through the firewall and insert the wire through here. A coat hanger might work as well, and just stick it through the firewall. But what we need to do first is take out the battery so we can have more space to stick through the firewall right there. Now that we ran the wires through the firewall, they came out here through the bottom of the dash. And so we have the red one, which we're going to hook up to the 12 volt constant because it's connected to the battery. And this black one is going to be used for the kill switch, which we'll assemble later. So for right now, what we want to do is we want to get the main harness, run it through the back of the dash, and connect the red with the red from the harness. This is a 12-volt constant supply. And the yellow is our kill switch activator. And that is going to go with this wire that we ran through the firewall. You don't have to do this if you're using a kill switch that goes to the ignition switch. In that case, you would run this wire into the ignition switch. But since we're running into the relay, which is going to cut off the starter, we want to connect it like this. And we're going to use 2 butt connectors, some wire strippers, and a crimping tool. So after connecting the wires, I ran those 2 wires through the back. You can still see them a little bit right there. Taped up the excess wire. And then if you follow it through, you can see where it goes through the firewall. The next cable we want to connect is this black wire, which is the ground wire. So we just got to connect this wire somewhere that's metallic on the car to ground it out. And one good way of finding that is just grab a magnet and like find somewhere that's metal on the car. Oh, like there, right there. That will work. All right, so I ran the black wire through the back, and I used a ring connector terminal to attach here to ground. So the black is now grounded. So the next one we have to attach is this green one right here to ignition. So whenever the car is on, the GPS knows that the car is on. And a good place to connect this ignition wire is to the cigarette lighter, which is right here, or through somewhere in the back of the radio. For this specific vehicle, I'm going to connect it to the cigarette lighter. I went ahead and detached the cable that goes to the back of the cigarette lighter, and it's got two wires, so we just got to find out which one's the positive, which is the negative, and we want to connect to the positive one. So here I have my voltmeter, and we're going to see which one of these 2 wires is the ignition wire. And in order for this to turn on, we need to have the car in accessory mode. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. All right, now that the car is in accessory mode, we're going to test to see which one of these 2 wires has power going through it. So we're going to go ahead and test this one first, and then ground this. Let me get a little better connecting. Okay, there you go. You see that this one is getting about 12 volts. So we want to connect this green wire, tap it into here, into the red and yellow wire here. Again, it's going to be different for every car, but that's how it is on this Mini Cooper. I went ahead and added a T-tap to this cigarette lighter, which turns on with the ignition, which is this green wire that I ran through the back. So this 12 volt, this green wire, the ignition wire, and this ground are pretty much all you need to have this running as a GPS tracker that is hardwired in now. And as you can see with this little mirror, since my GPS tracker is facing the other way, you can see some of the lights are on already back there. And if you look at the instruction manual, you'll see what each light indicates. So at this point, the GPS is getting power. And the next step would be to activate it through the TrackMateGPS.com website, which I'm going to go ahead and do now. And that should be fully activated within about an hour. Be sure to have your serial number ready when activating. So next, we're going to wire the relay for the kill switch. And the thing about it is that these wires might be totally different from what you receive in your package. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the instruction manual to show us not what colors we use, but what pins we use. And here you can see that there's these pins go down, these 3 pins, and then there's 2 pins that go side to side. So looking at this relay, we can see that these 2 pins right here, this one go side to side. These pins go up and down. Okay, so that tells us that our instructions here tell us that this is angled this way. And looking at our instructions, we can see that this top pin is not used at all. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just remove it, which is this yellow wire right here. I had already kind of pulled on it, so there, it comes off. So we're only using 4 wires on this relay. And again, our instructions show us right here that this middle pin and the pin on the right are connected together. Again, this middle pin and this pin on the right are going to be connected together. We're going to just tangle these two together. All right. And then what else does it tell us here? It says that the pin here on the left, this one is going to be connected to that wire that we ran through the firewall. So this wire is going to be coming from the GPS, and that way we can tell the relay when to turn on and turn off the starter. That way we have a way to turn on and off this kill switch. So I went ahead and connected these two wires together like the instructions told us to. And these two wires are going to go to the power side of the starter. So we're going to splice the starter wire and connect this to where the power is coming from. And then the instructions also say that this blue wire, again, it might be different on your kit, but that this blue wire goes to the non-powered side of the starter. And I'm going to add a little bit of wire to this one too, just so we have some room to work with. This white wire right here on the left, I'm not going to add any more wire to, just because we have some that's coming already from the firewall. So what you'll want to do is find the wire that goes to your starter, coming from the ignition. On this Mini Cooper, that's going to be this wire right here. This comes from the ignition and goes straight down to the starter. And that tells the starter when to turn on. So we're just going to cut up this wire spool to expose the wire in there and then connect our relay to this. Okay, so I wired up just like I explained. This white wire is going to the wire that came from the firewall. That goes to the yellow wire that tells the relay when to turn on and off. So we cut this white wire that I had explained about earlier, because this is the power that's going to the starter. This is the negative. So we cut this wire and we're sticking the relay in between. So these two wires, the black and the red, connect to the power side of the starter, which is coming from the ignition. And then the non-powered side is this other blue wire. And again, these two white wires were connected, we spliced it, and we're adding the relay in between. Pretty much the last thing to do here is to find a good spot for this relay, maybe zip tie it somewhere here. Tuck all these wires, and I have a new spool that I'm going to make it all look really nice. All right, so we went into the app and we disabled the ignition, which is going to turn on the kill switch. Gonna try to turn on the car now. You can see that it's trying to, but it just doesn't. Yep, so that is successful. Okay, now that I'm back on the app, I'm going to enable ignition, so this way the car will turn on now. All right, went ahead and did that, and it should start up. Perfect. Last thing to do is to wire the lock and unlock doors. All right, so grabbing our instructions and our wiring for the door locks, we can see that it tells us to look at it like this. And what I went ahead and did, and I just labeled the colors on mine. Again, they might be different on yours. So hold it like this and label it if you like, and we're gonna just follow the instructions. The two top wires, R1 input and R2 input, are to be combined and connected to power, positive, for positive locking systems, or ground, negative, for negative locking systems. So first things first is we're going to combine the two wires, and then we're either going to power them or ground them. So I went on the forums and I found out for this particular Mini Cooper, the door locks are negative triggered, which means that the wires have to be grounded. So what I'm going to do is I connected these two wires together, like the instructions told us to, and I'm going to ground them similar to what I did over here, right here. Go ahead and put a ring terminal. We'll go ahead and connect this wire, which goes right here where it says relay. So there I went ahead and grounded the two wires with a ring terminal on this bolt that's connected to the metal piece of the car. So next we have these two wires for the door locks. And as you can see here, the brown wire, the BR on the left, as I labeled it, is to unlock, and B for blue is to lock. So I found the information for this Mini Cooper online on a forum, and it tells me that the white wire with the thin black line is to lock the doors, and the blue wire with the thin violet stripe is to unlock the doors. Those wires that are mentioned on the forum would be right here where the door lock actuator is. But since the Mini Cooper door panel is a pain to take off, I found that the wires that run through the actuator come out through here, and I can actually find what I'm looking for right here. This probably isn't possible with all cars, so you should consider that when doing this yourself, as this can save you the hassle of running wires through the loom. Here are the wires coming out of the loom. As you can tell, I found the blue with the violet and the white with the thin black stripe, and I added T-taps to it so I can easily connect my wires to it. So I ran the wires through the back, down there, and I added T-tap connectors. So all I have to do now is connect the brown and the blue wires to the T connector that I left coming out the door lock actuator harness. Alright, so I went ahead and connected those wires together, and last thing to do is to test the app and see if the door lock switches are working. So I'm going to go ahead and click lock. Alright. Okay, now to unlock the doors on the app. Alright, it worked. So that's pretty much all there is to it to connect this TrackMate Dash T11. Last thing to do is to just finish tucking all the wires in neatly, taping them up, make sure nothing's in the way, make sure there's nothing that can short circuit, just double checking everything, and putting the dash back together. And that's all there is to it. It's not very hard and it's not very complicated, and it's just a couple simple wires.